Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Hey, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Man, this is great. This is great. It's not very often that we get to interview somebody who is kind of the multi-tool of real estate investing. You know, for a lot of us, we either interact with our brokers / agents on one hand and then our attorneys on the other, but you come in all in one package. So I'm excited to have you on today and just learn what it is that you do exactly. And, you know, the same questions we ask everybody, it's kind of where'd you start, where are you now, and how'd you get there? But if you can kind of give us that, you know, with the spin of what it looks like that from that perspective as an agent and attorney, I'd love just to hear your insights.
Yeah, just a basic intro. Started off, was in law school a number of years back and, living at home. And my mom said, hey, she knew a broker out there. I was in Michigan at the time, did all my schooling there in Michigan, currently in Ohio, though. But did all my schooling there. And then while in law school, she said, why don't you go work with this broker as an agent? That way you can pick up some experience, some knowledge. And I said, sure. Did it for a summer during I think it was after my second year in law school. And so got my Michigan license, was licensed there for a number of years. But then we moved down here to Ohio, let the licenses go. I was in the military reserves at the time. So kind of had a full plate there, full-time job, military reserves. And then once I got out of the military reserves, just, there's a lot of travel and a lot of other things to kind of keep up with as shift my schedule more towards family life. I got a couple of young kids and a wife. So just shift that. And then I'm one of those guys who, I need to keep myself busy. I like the quote I like to say is busy rather than bored. So once I had that extra free time, I decided to get my licenses back again. So in 2014, I got both my Ohio and my Kentucky real estate license. So attorney-wise, I'm licensed in Michigan, which I was born and raised, went to law school over there. And then when I came down here to Ohio, after a number of years, I decided to get my Ohio license, attorney license, just so I could do some work over here for clients here. And that kind of led me to, networking, meeting a lot of people, and basically working now with a local law firm here as an of counsel. And then I do a lot of real estate work, contract work with them, and then do my real estate sales work on the side as well, too.
That's interesting. So I bet you can draw in a lot of clients just because you can service kind of both sides of the transaction.
Yeah, definitely. I do mention to both my buyers and sellers on the real estate side, as well as the legal clients, hey, if you, like you mentioned, one-stop shop. If you need some help, I've got dabbled in some. I shouldn't say dabbled. I've got some experience in landlord tenant. So just, I don't do the evictions now. I kind of try and hone in and specialize on certain things. But I've got a deep network too. So if somebody does need, hey, I need an eviction attorney, or hey, I need to sue a tenant or sue a contractor, I've got litigation attorneys that I can loop in and then go that way. But my main specialty is, contract review, drafting contracts, as well as, for real estate sales, leases, landlord tenant leases, commercial side and residential side.
Right. And that's really great, for us from the investor's perspective, to be able to come to you and just say, hey, look, not only can you help me acquire the asset, but then you can also legally review our documents, to make sure they're legally compliant. And then, help us even review our leases and things like that to make sure that they are really sound. So what are some things that you would advise your clients to do, maybe that you see other agents aren't necessarily, watching out for?
I guess one of the things I kind of go back to is, as an agent, and I went through the same training that every agent has, is they tell you, you can use the form contracts that you get from the MLS or from your state level body. You can use those, but in terms of customizing it, if there's a blank in there, like you can add a date, you can customize it that way. You shouldn't be adding legal language in there. So if you're adding certain contingencies that, if they don't read incorrectly and they end up going against your client, that client can turn around and sue you. Versus as an attorney, I'm experienced at it, and as well as I understand that contingency too. So not saying that the real estate agents aren't experienced at it, but most states do have a prohibition against real estate agents from actually practicing law unless they are like myself, they're a licensed agent. If they do get into that and some, everything goes south, the buyer or the seller is mad at their agent. I mean, that's an easy, if I were the attorney going with that case, that would be an easy, wedge there to go after them to say, hey, you were practicing law without a license. And that's one way I'm going after you.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I mean, gosh, a lot of times the agents are drafting, quote unquote, legal language in the, other sections or whatever you want to call it. The bottom of the contract, it's like, well, we're going to add this and we're going to add this and add this. So what do you suggest we do? Take that back to our attorney if our agents come to us? Even if
you have an attorney, generally, most agents, they work for a broker if they're not a broker themselves. And, the broker should have, especially the larger brokerages, they usually have a general counsel or some sort of attorney services over there. I used to work for a large brokerage a couple of years ago when I started off in Ohio. So they had an attorney that we could always reach back to, if you had a question. Now there's, depending on the market now, especially with everything so fast, you might not have that time, but it's still best and advisable to do that. And, even if you have to slow it down or just leave out a provision and just kind of work with the offer and then see if you can, if it's something that you really need, then you might have to wait just to protect yourself.
Gotcha. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, not something I would have necessarily, because you would assume that most of the time those are fairly benign additions to a contract, but it sounds like that's a common pitfall. What else should we necessarily be looking out for?
I mean, I guess my process when I'm taking residential, multifamily, or even commercial real estate clients is, we have to look at all the numbers, kind of, I can't judge for them what they need, what they want, but I'll present them. I'll get everything that I can from the other side and say, here's what we got. You kind of need to do the math and you need to do the numbers, and I'll make sure that, hey, okay, this lease looks good, I'll look at something simple like zoning. You're buying a multifamily. They converted it later on, but they didn't get the necessary permits, or they're out of no permits, or it's zoned for single family and they're running a 3-unit in there. So hey, it might be a good deal, but that's why it's a good deal, because they're running illegally, and you never know when the city will turn around and say, hey, this is illegal. You need to kick out 2 of your tenants there, and that's going to be a big pain to deal with then too.
Right. It sounds like you've encountered that.
I've seen some, and in most of my clients' cases, that's, first thing we're checking too. I mean, if there's other multifamilies next door, that's kind of an easy way to figure it out. But if you're in a kind of a middle of a neighborhood and, they're the only duplex in there, then that's a question that always pops into my mind. Let me go check the zoning just to make sure that, this is a legal multifamily versus just, it's supposed to be single family.
Right. And from your perspective, so now we've covered contracts, we've looked at zoning a little bit. What are some other things, again, because you pack kind of the 1-2 punch that either the attorneys miss or that the agents typically miss, that you say, hey, I've got this perspective and these are things I think that both of you should be looking at?
One thing to look at too, especially with the big push in rehabs, is the permits. If you're not getting proper permits, depending on your area, your locale, the permit varies. In our case here in Cincinnati and in Northern Kentucky, majority of it, as long as you're not changing the existing walls, if you're just updating a bathroom, updating a bedroom, you're fine. If you're starting to knock down walls, add bathrooms, add certain features, extensions, and you don't have the right permits, yeah, you can do it. Most times, might not even be caught. But if you are caught, or if I'm representing the buyer, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to ask, did they pull permits for it? If they didn't, then I'll let the buyer know, well, hey, this is why it's a deal. You don't have the permits, but there's a potential that if they come back and say you don't have the permits, they can make you either undo the work, or they will make somebody, some other contractor come through and, meticulously document everything. And they're not going to do it for cheap either, just to make sure that, they can go retroactively apply the permits.
Right. Yeah. I can't imagine going through the permitting process retroactively. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. I actually do have a client who did that, and he got a great deal on a property. It was a 2-unit, so partly he should have known, and then partly the title company should have caught it, but there was a condemnation on it. So, nobody was living in there. He thought it was a great deal. He went through, bought it, updated it, rehabbed it, put in new tenants, and then the city comes along and says, hey, where's your permits? Did you take it out of condemnation? He goes, I didn't know it was condemned. And unfortunately there was some, the seller didn't disclose that. The title company didn't catch that. So I don't know if there was an issue with the city. They didn't post it in time. depending on closing. But after he closed on it, after he owned it, it was kind of incumbent upon him. But there were no notices posted. But unfortunately, he's kind of out of luck. They forced his tenants out, saying it is condemned, even though it's I've been through the house. It was perfect. I would live there based on the way he had updated and rehabbed it. It was, perfect. Put in all the plumbing, did everything pretty much by code. I mean, he's not, we don't have licenses here per se, and you don't have to have a licensed contractor unless you're getting permits. But in his case, I use him as a contractor, so I know his quality is very good. And like I said, I would have no hesitation in living in that unit. But the city said, no, sorry, it's condemned. You didn't go through the right process. You need to take your tenants out.
Wow. That's something to look out for sure. I would have thought that, that the title company would be on the line for something like that if there were a condemnation prior to closing.
Yeah, and that's something. I mean, he's a contractor now. Everything's busy and crazy, so he hasn't really had a chance to go back and kind of addressed it. He's come back to me and asked for help, and I've been trying to help him. But at this point in time, it's kind of like, hey, whenever you're free and you want to start working on this, let me know. We'll get back to it. But at the same time, too, it's we have to kind of go back and was it on the deed? It should have been on the deed. It should have been on the record. I mean, if it wasn't, then not necessarily the title company's fault. It could have been somebody at the city was just a little late in filing it. I don't know if the seller even knew. I mean, if the seller knew that they were required to disclose. So there's a lot of potential issues there, but it's you got it for a good deal, and getting it getting the permit process, getting it taken care of afterwards. I think it's going to be more cost effective than suing somebody for some piece of property he got for like $7,000.
Right. Yeah, there is that where you just have to look at the overall cost and say, well, whatever. I still paid a very reasonable rate for it. So call it the cost of doing business. When it comes to writing leases, and since you help out a lot with that, how has writing leases changed for you in 2020? I know we've had a lot of weird eviction moratoriums and just, wacky stuff going on. So what's that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily changed per se, and the process is still the same. I mean, my advising process for before you bring on tenants is basically if you're doing it yourself, or if you have a great property manager. I used to own a 4-unit where we had a great property manager, and luckily, while we owned it, we didn't suffer any negative effects from the virus shutdowns. We did have a few late rents, but ultimately they were paying, and he was keeping on. So, I mean, with, if you're self-managing, basically just got to screen properly. You got to find the right tenants and, go back, look at their history, look at their rental history, talk to the previous landlords. Why are they moving? What's the, what are they looking rent wise? I mean, it's one of those, hey, we need a place tomorrow and we're ready to pay you, double the security deposit, whatnot. But that's kind of a red flag to me too. It's like, they're ready to rent tomorrow. It's like, I don't want that kind of person. I had experience with that with a prior property manager who put somebody in, when they wanted to move in next week, and sure enough, within a week or two, they stopped paying their rents. And so it's those red flags and those kind of things people need to be on the lookout for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. What would you say the percentage of your business is spent doing the legal side versus the agent side?
I would say probably it shifts at times too. I mean, with the real estate market being so hot now, I'm doing a lot more real estate work. So, I mean, we're probably at the, 60, 70% real estate, 30, 40% law. And then there's times when, it's, a couple of years ago when it wasn't as hot, then it was kind of 50-50 balance.
Right. And you're in the Ohio, Northern Kentucky. You said I think you're based out of the Cincinnati or greater Cincinnati area.
Yes. Yeah. I live in Cincinnati area, but I'm licensed in Ohio and Kentucky, and I service the Northern Kentucky area.
Right. I gotcha. That's awesome. I guess
I'll talk a little bit about my own background too. With I've had a multifamily unit. Kind of explore where I went with that too. In the past, I did when I was in the military. We had a house at the time we were living in. It was a brand new development, new construction. So I was called to active duty. Going to move to Fort Bragg for a year. Kids were young; they were not in school yet. So I told the wife and kids, let's just all go together. We'll hang out in North Carolina for a year. So that new house couldn't rent it out couldn't sell it because it was a brand new development. So we would have taken a loss. And so at that time, it was like, let's just rent it out.
Sure.
Found was a decent property manager at the time, and they took care of it for a while. Towards the end there, they kind of, went off the rails, ended up selling that. That was the one where I mentioned that, they're the ones who stuck in a tenant there who wanted to move in within 1 week. Then we, sorry, did you want to ask a question or?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Then we, kind of got out of that. And then my wife was like, she doesn't want a single family anymore. We wanted to invest in a multifamily.
Oh.
So we got a 4 unit then back in 2016, kind of got it before everything started running up here in Cincinnati.
Right.
That was a good deal. I tried self-managing at the time. I wanted to see did I want to go into that line of work? Did I want to be a property manager? So it was, it was an interesting experience. It was, with everything I do, it was like one of those things like, okay, I'm biting off more than I can chew. Let me, I did it for a couple of years. It was just too much. There was days too, and I wasn't doing it effectively because I just didn't devote the time. And that's when I was like, I have no issue now paying a property manager, whatever they're going to take. They took care of it. Once I transitioned it within a month or two, I didn't have to visit at all.
Right.
I literally didn't visit it for, a year plus then after that. Just recently when we were selling it, then I had to go there once or twice just to handle a few things. And other than that, it was, cakewalk. So that's kind of one of those things where I personally was like, if somebody wants to do it themselves and that's all they have to do, that's fine. In my case, scaling my time, using my time wisely was better pointed towards the law and actually helping clients buy properties.
Right. And what are the typical, unit sizes that you're seeing, I guess, trading hands right now in your market?
A lot of interest in the 4 and under just because of the conventional mortgage. Anybody buying a 4 and under, 2 to 4 multifamily, 2 to 4 units, they prefer the conventional mortgage. You can get your 30-year mortgage. Your interest rates are slightly higher than owner occupied single family. That's still pretty good to lock away that for 30 years. And especially if you're cash flowing, you're getting enough cash per door, then it's a great investment. That's why we did it. And then when you're in the 5 or above units, then you're in the commercial space in terms of the mortgages. And so for that, with the commercial mortgages, you're rarely, if ever, going to find a 30-year fixed mortgage. You're looking at maybe 5-10-year lock on the rate. They might amortize the mortgage over 20-25 year at most. So your interest rates are also going to be much higher, and generally your down payment requirements are going to be much higher.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Yeah, the 4 and under is moving quite a bit, and I can see that, especially with interest rates coming down so low. If you're getting a non-commercial loan,
yeah.
I don't know where we are right now, but we're hearing in the twos, maybe the 2.5% to 3% right now, which is almost crazy.
Yeah.
So this is being recorded mid-December 2020. So I know this won't come out until January 21, but even so, I can't imagine things are going to move quite a bit from there. So that property management company, and let's talk about that just briefly. You kind of went through the property management phase and said, no, I don't want to do that. And so one of your keys to really focusing your time and effort was outsourcing that.
Yeah, definitely. Even while property managing, I outsourced the maintenance. I did a few things myself, but I can't, I'm not that handy. So I had to hire people to do that, and did meet a lot of good contractors, and I still keep them on my database. And that's one of the other big benefits too, is that, I've done it, been there, done that, have all the networks in place. So if somebody needs help with doing something, I was like, here, talk to this person over here, and they're a great connection. They'll help you out, and I've got, contractors, I'll tell them these guys they're busy as heck, but if you want somebody quality, you want it done right, then same thing. Unless it's, the heater's gone and tenant's freezing in the house, then obviously, yeah, you need to do something right then and there. But, if you can wait a little bit, then it's better to wait to get that quality contractor that, they don't charge the most, but they're not going to be that quick out to you either, because they're just so busy.
Right. That's awesome. So people come to you, they can find contractor recommendations, they can get their legal work done. You will be their agent, and then you can plug them in with a property management company. It's a one-stop shop. Yeah,
I try to. I think that's ideal. And a lot of times people come and they talk about when you want to buy real estate, you got to build your team. So I try to fill those multiple roles in the team. I've got the legal background. We need to review contracts. We need to prepare leases. You've got a potential eviction issue. I'm happy to sit down and talk with them and say, okay, this is what you got eviction wise. I did my own evictions while doing as a property manager, so I'm familiar with that step. But build your record, build your keep logs of everything, keep keep track of everything that's going on anytime you communicate with your tenants and that type of thing. So it's always ideal to have somebody like that on your side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Paul, this is great. Let's jump into the final four here. If you were to take everything you know about law and real estate and distill it down to one piece of advice that you were giving to an aspiring investor, what would that one piece of advice be?
Find your team. I mean, even if you don't have one person to do it all, find your team. Don't rush into it. Don't hop into buy a property because you find a great deal. Because if you don't have a great team behind you, that property is quickly going to turn to mush, basically.
Right.
So, build your team, make sure you trust them, use word of mouth, look at reviews, and then go forward from there.
Right. That's awesome. What's one thing you're currently doing to stay on top of your game?
I love to read. I love to network. So reading is big and networking. And part of it, we mentioned that earlier too, I podcast as well. And so I'll podcast with a lot of local people, with lenders, inspectors, appraisers, home stagers, and just share that information. It's, podcast is free out there for anybody. And then, meet the people. It's like, hey, this is, quality people, and let's network and let's get everybody out there.
Right. That's awesome. When it comes to giving back, what's one way you're making the world a better place?
I guess with this pandemic too, I mean, you see all the, the kind of the unemployment, everybody's suffering. So my big pet charity, a couple of charities here are the Free Store Food Bank and La Soup. I mean, they're great. Basically Free Store Food Bank is a food bank, they're helping people, get food and eat. Same thing with La Soup. They basically take foods that's normally it's still good to consume, but that normally they're going to be thrown away by the big grocery stores. They use it, they repurpose it, they make fresh meals for people to eat. So they're a great great service here. Another thing I do is since I'm active social media and I know a lot of the posting SEO and all that stuff on the internet. So I do volunteer work for an organization called SCORE, where we just advise small businesses. So it's like a new startup business, and I'll sit down one-on-one with them and we'll say, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's how you can market your business. Here's what you need to do, business planning wise. So that's, I'll do that one-on-one with these small entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. I might need to look that up because that sounds like a great way to give back. And especially right now when entrepreneurs and small businesses are really taking it on the chin kind of across the country. So
yeah, they're nationwide SCORE. So each large city has their own chapter. You could just SCORE and probably look at like small business and SCORE on Google, and I'm sure you'll find them.
That's awesome. Paul, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Via email. You can email me, paul@realcincy.com. That's Paul at REALCINCY.com. That's my MLS-based website too, realcincy.com. So you got my email over there, phone number as well too. So feel free to reach out, realcincy.com, CINCY.com.
Awesome. Paul, thank you so much for your time. It was great having you on.
Thanks, Sam.